anyway. So the main thing that I would like to sort of point out to you really is that perspective matters. And what I've got here, and there's a lot about how mindset affects how we see things. What I have here are trees, one in the sort of spring when it's got the leaves coming up, leaves on it. So it's late spring. This is autumn, and this is a winter tree. Early, actually, it's late winter, early spring. And I think if you look carefully, there are buds on there. But they're all beautiful, and they're all beautiful in their own right. And if we look at ourselves and we think about the seasons of our life, if you like, autumn is this time that, is the perimenopause. It's getting ready for the winter, and that moves into the spring. And I talk a lot about the idea that menopause leads to our second spring, a new beginning, a new life, a fresh start. And we can see that each of these pictures are beautiful in their own right. And how we think about, therefore, the perimenopause, menopause, life after menopause really does matter, because we would never dream of thinking that a tree in autumn wasn't as beautiful as the tree in summer or the tree in winter. They're all beautiful in their own way, and they all have a purpose, and they all happen for a reason. So it's really important that we look at perspective and the reality versus perception. So here we are. I'm just going to try and get people in here to watch. I think this may be, we've got somebody watching on live, so that's good. Hi, Linda, nice to see you on Facebook. I hope this is going to be useful. If you've got any questions, please let me know via Facebook. I am looking at that on my phone. So what I have here is a little bit around some of the research that I've been looking at, and also the kind of things that really matter. So how we perceive something affects how we feel it. And the interesting thing is that perception of perimenopause and menopause. So the most recent survey I could find was one done in late 2022, I think it was, in Northern Ireland, which showed that 31% of the women were dreading hitting perimenopause and menopause. So I'm curious as to you and how you feel about it. I know for me, for a start off, perimenopause wasn't something I really knew about very much. It was kind of, I don't know, it's this thing that, I knew about. Hi, Jane. Hi, Tricia, as well, watching me on Facebook. That's brilliant. Any questions, as I say, let me know. If you could let me know your thoughts about perimenopause and menopause were before you entered it, and even now, it would be really interesting to know, because, as I say, almost a third of women in Northern Ireland were dreading their perimenopause. And I should imagine that that's actually replicated in a lot of Western countries. And as I say, I kind of thought of it as the beginning of the end. It was like, oh, I want to keep that away. I want to make sure that perimenopause doesn't happen to me. And so, at times when I thought it might be that, or the GP was saying it, I was kind of in denial. And I don't think that helped. That whole sense of denial and not really leaning into my body, looking after my body, and really accepting it was any good, but also kind of making a joke of it, So when I'd walk through my office door and go into the admin team, and I'd forget what I wanted to ask them, it was kind of, menopause moment, can't remember. But it was a joke. But really the reality of not being able to remember stuff, and that got so much worse for me, is terrifying. So, I wish I'd known a little bit more about what this brain fog really was and what I could do to look after it. I also really wish I'd known a little bit more about the whole thing around perimenopause and how it affects the body when it is, what we can expect and what we can do to support ourselves. I also wish I'd had a better view of menopause, so that I wasn't trying to be in kind of, nah, not listening, it's not happening to me mode, and trying to be in denial, because I don't think that helped. So one of the key things that I think, I would say to everybody is pay attention to your body and your mind. Notice the daily variations, and then within the day, the variations, and really kind of think, what's going on when this is happening? And the other thing we have to be very mindful of is this catastrophic thinking. And I used to be hugely prone to catastrophizing. It really wasn't good for me, but I was very prone to it. And I knew that when I was, my PMS used to bring on at least a day of catastrophizing. So what happened later on into my perimenopause was that this catastrophizing and this deep depression that I'd go in for 24 hours would stay there, and I would lose contact with reality, which was not very good for me. So Linda says I was only 39 when I was diagnosed as being peri, so didn't really have a chance to dread it. But I was almost relieved initially that suddenly my symptoms made sense. But yeah, as they went, I thought I lost my youth and was on my way to elderly life, and I hated that stage of feeling. That I can completely understand, Linda. I think I was in my 30s originally when they said, I think you're perimenopausal. But, given the fact that they say that that's only supposed to last 5 to 10 years, my menopause didn't happen until I was 55. So almost 56, in fact. So actually, that's no worries, Antonio, you're allowed to be late. Once you knew it was going on, it helped you accept it. That's interesting. And I'm wondering whether acceptance and leaning into it are two slightly different things. Because I don't think I've really accepted it until I started researching it and looking at it. So the other thing that I found when I was doing this thing around mindset and how mindset affects it. Yes, still peri. Yes, you see, that's a little bit like me, isn't it, Linda? That long stretch of going on. Yeah. And I don't know whether you're familiar with this idea of the placebo effect, the idea that when they're testing drugs, sometimes they give people, say, sugar pills and tell them that, they are the new drug or whatever it is. And they can find that people who believe that they're taking a medication that will help them improve. But the same thing can happen and so they've noticed this when they give people medications and say, there's a really strong chance of these side effects, or there's a really strong chance that this won't work. Doesn't tend to work, or they tend to have those side effects. But it happens in other situations as well. So that's the nocebo effect and the placebo effect. Placebo is where the positive impact on the brain has a positive impact on the body. And the nocebo effect is when a negative thought in our brain has a negative effect on the body. So another thing around mindset and placebo effect is, for example, they did a study where they went into a whole load of hotels. And in some of those hotels, they took the housekeepers aside and explained to them that all of the work that they were doing, what that meant in terms of the level of physical exercise they were doing and the impact it would have on their bodies. And in the control groups, they didn't do any of that. And what they actually found was the women who'd been told, look, all the exercise you do in your daily life, when they took account of all the other things that can make a difference, those women suddenly started getting fitter, started losing weight. They weren't doing anything different. They were carrying on doing their daily job. Nothing had changed. The only thing that changed was they were aware that their daily job had a positive impact on them. And that's huge. There was another study where they basically looked at how we think about age. And they looked at I think it was about 61,000 people that they studied. And they looked and they said, all right, what are your views of aging? When do you think you're old? And those people who thought that they were old, say at 60, lived 7.5 years less on average than those who didn't believe they got old until, you didn't define old age until at least 70. Those who believed that, they wouldn't be mobile and this, that, and the other weren't. And those that believed that they could keep on going did. So our mind has an amazing impact on our bodies, and it can do both positive and negative things. So then we come to this statistic about women and the fact that, more women in the UK, we experience apparently more symptoms of perimenopause and more severe symptoms of perimenopause than anybody else in the world. I'm not convinced there's anything special in a negative way about UK female bodies. But I am mindful that the attitudes to age for women in the UK is not great. It's improving, but it hasn't been great. There's been this kind of thing that says you must stay young. You're useful to society when you're young and beautiful and lithe and can run around and all of these things. But once you're not reproductive, once you're not, that live female, you're less useful to the world. I mean, I remember a few years back that furore when they took the older women off Countryfile because they didn't believe they were attracting the right audience. And I think that, they've brought 3 of the older women back to do a program to kind of make up for that, not Countryfile, but something else. But it is this that, the media plays a huge part in how we feel about menopause and how we feel about ourselves as we approach perimenopause and menopause. Then with this nocebo effect and placebo effect, the way the mindset affects our body and our physiology and everything about us, our well-being and our physical and our mental health. If we have this negative view of women at this stage, we're going to dread it. We're not going to want to be in it. And we're going to feel every little thing about us that's going on, and we'll notice it. And because we're noticing it and we're feeling it, we'll feel it more. So when you give somebody a placebo painkiller and say that's going to eliminate your pain, they are less likely to feel pain than if you give somebody a medication and say, try this, it probably won't work. They'll still feel the pain. And that's what's going on. It really is our mindset that will happen. If you go to the gym and you think, I'm not as fit as everybody else, you won't be, because you will make yourself tire more easily. You won't, you will have this mind. If you have this mindset that says everybody else is fitter than me, ultimately everybody else will be fitter than you, because you create what you think you create. And that's really quite a really powerful thing. Anybody else resonating with that? Anybody else thinking, any experiences that you've got where you're thinking about something really affected where you were with it? As I said, for me, it's catastrophizing. If I thought something terrible was going to happen, something terrible happened because I noticed it. If I thought I couldn't do something, I couldn't do it because I noticed it. But equally, if I thought, I can do that, I can get there, I can achieve it, I do it. And there's no difference except for the fact that my brain is saying one thing or the other. And I do wonder if others have got that experience or not. So moving on. We move to this slide. This is, and some of you will have seen this if you've been around the group for a while. I did bring this up. This came up originally back in around May, June last year, and I did a little bit of work on this. But all of this stuff on mindset has really solidified in terms of how it really affects our physiology, the science behind the way it affects our physiology. You're still not doing a daft mud run or sinking in the sea. Oh, but you can do anything, Antonio. What's your challenge going to be? I think this has really solidified for me why this is important. And I'm actually, I'm going to take this a little bit further and work with people directly so that they can really experience that the transformative way that this works. Linda's saying, I have times when I have done that a lot, looking for a problem, telling yourself you're preparing for what if, and then it happens. Absolutely. If you think it's going to be terrible, it'll be terrible. That is ultimately, I think, where we're at. And my son, when he was born, was in the intensive care baby unit. I don't think for one moment I let myself think he won't survive. Because I don't know if I'd really taken on board that the doctors were telling me there's only a 10% chance of survival, where my head would have been at. So there, my brain was protecting me. It was not letting me think the worst might happen. But on other occasions, my brain has just gone, you need to be prepared for the worst because the worst is going to happen. And I go into a spiral because of that. And my health suffers and everything else. I have made myself ill thinking about being stressed or thinking about being ill. And so this is why I know this is such an amazing thing. And I created this 6 steps to a positive mindset program, if you like, from really looking at what it is that it means to be truly in your second spring. And by that, I mean this idea that we can be who we want to be. We're free from those expectations of we must do this, we must do that, we must nurture here, we must, we must put everybody else before ourselves. Estrogen and progesterone, those hormones actually build that in us. We're no longer slave when we hit our second spring, when we hit our postmenopausal stage. We're no longer slave to those monthly cycles of hormones up and down that for many of us impact the way we think, the way we feel, the way we look, more bloated, whatever it is. They really have an impact. We're no longer slave to that. Yes, there are some downsides, but there are so many positives. I'm not sure I want to be 20 again. I'm really happy where I am and who I am. Yes, my body would probably be better if I lost some weight, but I'm not stressing over it. I'm not stressing about what other people think. My body can do amazing things. It's swum ridiculous distances. It's run marathons. It's walked long distances. It's gone up mountains. It's done muddy runs. My body has done some amazing things. My brain has done some amazing things. I've run schools. I've run trusts. I'm proud of who I am. And I think that I've got flaws. Of course I've got flaws. Everybody's got flaws. But, that whole thing around, it's okay to be you. I remember the teenage me, and in fact, for so much longer, but for the teenage me, this is where it started. I need to fit in. I need to look like so-and-so. I need to act like so-and-so. I need to do this. I need to do that. And I don't think that feeling of I can be who I am has ever really truly come out until these last few years, where it's been okay to be me. And, it's that take it or leave it. If you're not that happy, to some degree, yes, I can do some things to help, but actually, maybe you're not my sort of person. Linda's saying she's had that same experience of making herself ill. Antonia says she's now in trouble. I'm not entirely sure why you would be in trouble for just stating that you're not going to do a daft mud run. I think, you might be entirely sensible doing that, to be honest, Antonia. Just some of us are less sensible and like doing silly things. So finding that authentic you and being compassionate to self and liking self is a huge step and not an easy step. It really isn't an easy step. But one of the things that we can then kind of do to look after ourselves is, and to really step into this, I have control. This idea that I know I am who I am and I have control, is to look after the physical side of our bodies. We look after our brains and we look after the physical side. But so many of us have challenges with food. So many of us have challenges with sleep. And so many of us think that we can't do the physical activity. There's so much around gyms, for example. If you go into a gym and you walk in and there's all those, I don't know, 20, 30 something blokes, and sometimes older as well, trying to lift the heaviest weight and staring at you if you go anywhere near the weights, you go, what right have you got to come over here? It's really hard. And I've been really, really fortunate to be part of some all-female communities that have really helped me get into that active mindset and keep active, because there's something about those all-female communities where you don't feel that pressure, and it's amazing. Yeah, the hardest step, Linda, is very much it's the okay to be you, the authentic step, the authentic self. And I think sometimes if we can be comfortable with that, we find it much more easy to do the second one. Looking after our stress is key to a lot of this. Massively important that we're mindful of how stress affects our body, because one of the things that changes during this period, we think, because of the levels of hormones changing, our ability to manage certain things decreases. So in the same way as we become less tolerant of sugar, we also become less tolerant of cortisol in our systems, we think. And so stress has a bigger impact on us than it maybe used to do. We can't cope with those late nights anymore. We need our sleep. Yet some of us, annoyingly just aren't getting that sleep. But the benefits of being out in nature, of eating a Mediterranean diet, of really looking after the way you sleep, your sleep patterns, your hygiene around that, and being active. And active can be doing the housework. It can be going for a walk, walking your dog, or it can be going to the gym and doing one of those ridiculous workouts where, you're dragging weights across the floor and you're running and everything. Your level of activity is your level of activity for you. The key thing here is being active. It's not a competition. There is no competition that says, this is how you get active and you have to be this level and more. I mean, all of that stuff around, for example, do 10K steps a day, that was designed because they invented the Fitbit and they needed something to promote it. There's no science behind it. In fact, the science suggests that 3,000 intensive steps are far more useful to you than 10,000 little, 10,000 gentle steps. So the amount is irrelevant. It's kind of the level of intensity for you. Get your heart rate up. That's what's important. And when it comes to sort of building muscle strength and bone strength, do things that put some pressure on your body in terms of bones and strength. So gardening is great for that. Probably housekeeping too. A number of things are really good for that. And the thing I put out today on my little journaling prompt was about relationships. And this really keys into this next step connection. We are human beings. And we are naturally drawn to being in communities. That's how we feel alive. That's how we feel safe. So we need to be connected. So it's important that we invest in our relationships. And yet at this period during perimenopause, so many relationships break down. Relationships at work, relationships in the home, relationships with our children. A lot of these things start to get tension in them and pull apart and twist. And it's not good for them. It's not good for us. So this is where education for everybody around us, as well as ourselves, as to what the effects of this menopause thing is on us. In the sense that it's like having your second teenager. Your brain is a little bit mushed at this moment in time. It recovers, really does, but it's a little bit mushed at this time. And your ability to manage stress, your ability to manage frustration, your ability to keep calm and be resilient at this point in time is reduced. And it's at this point we really need the people around us to show compassion. But we also need to make sure that we don't isolate ourselves. So many of us start to isolate ourselves at this stage because we don't feel like we're worthy. And we start to hide. And that's really not good for us. But other ways that you can build connection are with these practicing gratitude. And Antonia puts a post up every single day around her moment of joy. And that's a really, really good way of building connection, because what you're doing is you're building connection to yourself, your experiences, and the world around you. And that works. It's shown to chemically impact the brain in a positive way, as is giving to others. And that can be volunteering. That can just be, I don't know, giving somebody a hug. It's all the same, because it generates the feel-good hormones in our brain and really helps build that sense of connection to others, connection to self. Antonia says, I think you are correct, by the way. What we think about ourselves is so very important, especially if you want to manifest. I'm a great manifester once I knew what it was. Yes, this idea of manifesting, which is being where you want to be, but doing it now, manifesting the future in yourself now. And it's something I'm still working on and still trying to understand and work through. But these things are so, so, so important to who we are and where we're at. Insight is really that thing around curiosity, remaining curious. So explore menopause, find out about menopause, be curious about yourself, be curious about the world around you. What really makes you tick? What really annoys you? What really gets in the way? Those things are really important to sort of really explore and try and dig underneath. Really powerful stuff. Have you read The Secret I Found? I found that helpful for gratitude and manifesting. I haven't, Linda, but I think I might have to explore that. I'm a great believer in curiosity and insight. I really am. It's massively important to me. I'm naturally curious as a science teacher. But you know what? I think in the later stages of my perimenopause, I didn't feel like I had the brain capacity to think, to be curious, to do anything. And I think that let me down. I think stress really got in and everything else took over. And my view of the world was negative. And my view of the world was also that I had no self-efficacy, that I couldn't do anything about it. But my knowledge now is that that was by far the wrong, but well, it was completely the opposite of where the reality really sat. And so we move then to purpose. And this is this thing around having a meaning and values in your life. And so many of us in midlife, that sense of who we are, that purpose changes. In fact, we might lose it. We might have defined ourselves at a certain level in work, and the fact that our brain is turning to mush is making that really hard. We may have defined ourselves as the parent, and our children are leaving home. So that's really hard. We may have defined ourselves as, I don't know, the wife, and our relationship struggling, and that's breaking down. So whatever we feel is our sense of purpose may well be changing at this point. So finding those things that really matter to you, those values that you have. And sometimes the easiest way to find out what your values are is to identify what really annoys you in others. Because if something really annoys you, then that's a value that you hold dear. So one of the things that really annoys me is when people don't show gratitude. So I know that that's, being grateful for stuff, saying thank you, being polite is really important to me, because it annoys me when people don't do it. And the classic example is when people don't say thank you when you stop for them so they can come around a car and carry on. I have listened to it on Audible. You can't read in my house, as Huey loves to eat paper. Oh dear. I get that it helps to read at different times. I gain different bits at different times when I reread it. I think that's true with so many of these sorts of books, isn't it, Linda? That we look at them through different eyes and see different things each time we delve into them. And I find that really hard in Audible, if I'm really honest. But I know a lot of people really swear by that because it goes straight into their brain and they don't have to process it in any other way. Having that purpose and your life aligned really then draws you together, so that kind of you start to see that you're not at the end of your life. You're not entering the final period of life where, you just exist and then you die. That's not what you're doing. You have a purpose and you're living it every single day. And, working towards goals and challenge. And I was talking to a fellow coach this morning, actually. We went for a coffee together and we were talking about this need for a goal to keep us motivated. We were talking about exercise. And I was talking about my goal, which is to swim Windermere. And her goal, she's been doing major challenges like the Yorkshire Three Peaks, the London to Brighton Ultra, and things like that. So she has goals that she works towards. And that keeps her motivated. And it really does make a difference to how we experience things. So much more easy to turn up and exercise when there's a purpose to it. So much more simple to continue in our daily life in a positive way when we feel that we have purpose, when we feel we have meaning. So that being purposeful and having purpose is really key. And finally, and it kind of loops right back then to this authentic self and links in obviously to all the others as well, is this a sense of building this awareness of self. Really, really kind of looking inwards on ourselves and being aware, not just of our thoughts, but how our thoughts affect our body, where we feel the tension, how we can release the tension. For me, for example, I know I hold the tension here and my shoulders come up. And if I take a thought inside and I notice that, I relax my jawline, which is the other bit that goes, I drop my shoulders and I can relax and I can let the tension seep out my fingertips and it goes. But I have to notice that first and I have to know where I hold it. So being aware completely of ourselves, knowing where we feel those pains when we're stressed, knowing where we get that tiredness, what thoughts create the tiredness, what thoughts create the pain, because often those are thoughts that are there, and linking the two. What pain creates the thoughts? It's that whole understanding and awareness of body. That by mindful practice, I do not mean meditation, but by all means meditate if that works for you, because meditation has shown to alter the way the brain works in a really powerful way. I struggle. I don't meditate. I'll be honest with that. But when we're aware of ourselves, we can create this intentional action. We can do things with take deliberate steps in our daily life and in our way of being that build this self-care, build this positive mindset and move us forwards. I agree with you, Antonio. It drives me absolutely nuts. Really does. And the students at the school I was head at discovered this quite quickly, when they were, you really don't like that, do you? No, I don't. It really cuts deep. It's not part of me. So this is really my 6 steps. And I am developing a program where I can work with individuals or groups to really look at what this means for you. And some steps might be very simple and you might already be there, and other steps might be way, way, way out of your comfort zone at the moment. So we'll explore that. But this comes from so much research. It comes from research in terms of the 4 pillars of mental health and well-being. And then it also comes out of the research of what's been shown to make a positive difference to our experiences of mindset. So that's where we're at. So really, all we come to now is if there are any questions or any check-ins, anybody who would like to ask anything. If you're watching this on replay, can you put #replay? But can you also put in the questions, any questions that you have at this stage? Anything that's coming up for you, anything you disagree with, anything that you think it's all well and good, but how am I supposed to do that? These are really good questions because they're massively important. It's easy for me to sit here and say, do this, do that, do the other, moving up those steps, do each of those, and then you'll be fine. But what I haven't said in here is there is a place for a HRT when that works for you. But there's also a place for, as well as HRT or without HRT, looking at ourselves and looking inward, exploring what goes on in here, which will help us with what goes on for the rest of our bodies, and being really aware of that placebo-nocebo effect. The way we think affects what we experience, and try and build this positive view of the future and live it in the here and now. That whole idea of manifesting now where we should be in the future. Really, really, really important. So thank you for listening, everybody. I hope that if you have any questions, you'll leave the messages. I struggle with step 1 mainly. I feel I've got there, then I lose it again. And the rest falls, then I go around again. Linda, this is why I put that as step 1. This bit about being okay with ourselves is the most important step, but equally, and more importantly, it's a very, very difficult step, because we've been conditioned to kind of be somebody else. We're conditioned to fit in, and we're conditioned to serve others. And this whole idea of putting ourselves first, for example, can often be the biggest challenge for us. And we're all the same, Linda. You know, I had, and I think I put it in the group, I had, you know, a bit of a dip last week. I suddenly thought on Thursday evening, cool, my brain's not where it was. I'm not feeling myself. I'm not feeling confident. I'm not feeling that it's okay to be me. I'm thinking I need to be somebody else, or I need to be somewhere else. Or who am I to think that I can be a coach? Who am I to think I'm a menopause educator? And for me, one of the resets that I know I need is I need outdoors. And I'd missed my midweek swim. We hadn't had a swim in the sea on Wednesday. Lots of reasons for it, but we hadn't. And I noticed yesterday evening, after 2 swims in the sea and a walk with a friend and a couple of fitness clubs sessions, I was back there again. And I was aware that my brain was freer, that my body was freer, that the aches and pains and the headache that I was experiencing had eased. Now, that was my reset. But resets for different people. And sometimes the reset is about being with others. And what I didn't say about all of those things that I did was there was contact with others. I was with friends. And I don't know if it's the activity, the exercise, or the people that made a difference. But I do notice that physical and connection are in this here. I reconnected with my purpose. I was aware of myself. The curiosity had gone a little bit, but it was there. What is going on? I was thinking about, where's my mind gone? And I had to remind myself that it is okay to be me. And part of that means it's okay to have bad days. It's okay not to be okay. But we have to be rock solid in this, in terms of we can find it again when we lose it. And we have to have a belief in it. And as you say, Linda, when step 1 goes, we lose the rest. And we need others around us, I think, as well, to pull us in. But we need to notice it, and we need to notice when it's happening and know kind of where we need to go to get that help. And that's one of the things that I also want, you know, I want to put into this program that I'll be doing, is a lot of work around this. This is where most of the work will be done. And then up here, I think these 2 steps, authentic self and purpose, can be the most difficult steps to take, because they're the most, the less concrete. They're far more abstract. Any other questions or any other comments? Thank you for that, Linda. That was a really important thing to say. Okay, so if that's it, I'll just leave with this slide at the end, just the different ways. This is going to appear on any that do, different ways people can work with me. This is new. This is the thing that I want to do a bit more on. Anybody who came on this journey with me would be doing it as a kind of beta testing. So the first one will probably run for a nominal fee or free, because I want to test it out. But thank you very much. And I will now stop sharing and bring this to an end. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody.